Football Hall of Famer, top 100.
Tyler Lockett from the Seattle Seahawks.
DK Metcalf.
Hey, Burleson, you're watching NorbCam.
NorbCam.
You're watching NorbCam.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is NorbCam coming at you. Just checking in, another free agency update. Not to mention a coronavirus update here in the state of Washington. Yesterday afternoon, the governor of the state finally formally issued the order that stay-at-home order now. So unless you are of essential personnel in the workforce, everybody else has to pretty much stay at home besides getting groceries, picking up prescriptions. It pretty much has to be kind of life, requiring type of things. And so we're pretty much stuck here like we've already been, but even more so now. Although you can still go out, take a walk, and do those sort of things as long as you stay 6 feet away from people. But for most of us, it means that we're stuck in our places right now. So I thought, what better way to pass the time than to talk a little Seahawks free agency, just to get our minds off the virus. And we've done a few of these now, but I want to bring them back again because they are a great guests of the show. So here they are again, Calvin, Domingo, and Noah Boelter of KGRG Radio back again to talk a little Seahawks free agency. And they have been a little bit busy the last couple days, but maybe first, before we get into the meat and potatoes, Calvin, Noah, how you guys doing in this continuing saga that we know as the coronavirus situation? How you guys doing?
I'm feeling well, feeling healthy, feeling good, feeling blessed.
Yeah, just holding it together, waiting for this whole quarantine to be over. But no, how can you even start the video without mentioning that great new background you got? Such a constant professional you are. It looks so good.
Well, I was trying to be, subtle and not to make a big mention of it, but isn't it pretty cool? Working a little high-tech stuff cool in here. I just thought, I want to mix it up a little bit. Just, have a little fun, see what I can play with to just enhance the show. We're always looking to try to improve things a little bit. So Seahawks are looking to improve things on their end as well. So I'd say the biggest splash that they've made, at least in the last few days, they picked up finally addressing the secondary of the Seattle Seahawks acquiring via trade cornerback from the Redskins, Quinton Dunbar, a former 5th-round pick. Or I should say they traded him for a 5th-round pick. They got to pick up his, I guess, if I understand correctly, his $3.25 million salary, which is a $4.4 million cap hit. He's 27 years old. Originally out of Florida in 2015, was a receiver, but they converted him into cornerback. Just a quick few numbers: 9 career interceptions, 6 over the last 2 seasons. And 2018, he was the starting corner and Pro Football Focus's number 4 ranked corner last year. But he has had a little bit of injury problems the last couple of years. But could this be the guy that we've been complaining a lot about, Trey Flowers being off and on last season? Could he be the answer at right corner? Noah, let's start with you.
Well, whenever you talk about Quinton Dunbar, you have to make – I posted a video today, and I'm making a very controversial comparison to Richard Sherman. I'm putting it out there now. Here's why I say that. He went undrafted, so he has a big chip on his shoulder. That reminds me of Sherman. We traded him for a 5th-round pick. That's the same round that we took Richard Sherman. Norb, you pointed it out. He started at wide receiver. I'm not sure if you know this, but the reason that they switched him from wide receiver to cornerback, defensive back, was because they were trying to get him on the roster in Washington. And so what they did was they put him on special teams. He lined up on the punt unit, and he was trying to jam the gunner, which is the guys on the outside that are super fast that try and go get the guy who catches the punt. He did such a good job with his hand fighting that they decided to flip him over and try him on defense, and that's become his biggest strength. When I watch this guy, Quinton Dunbar, I love his hand fighting and his physicality with receivers off the line of scrimmage. and down the field. He has a really high football IQ, and he's really good at undercutting routes because he used to run them when he was on offense, just like Richard Sherman. Considering that he was a wide receiver, it's impressive that he's only missed 3 tackles each of the last 2 years. His biggest issues are his dropped interceptions. He's always in position to make a play, but sometimes he doesn't make that play. Love his IQ, got to finish the plays at times, and his injury history, which you alluded to. He's never played a full season, but he is coming off the best year of his career. He's gonna want to get paid after this year, and if he keeps on the trajectory from last season, I'd say we pay him 4 picks last year in 11 games was more than Flowers and Griffin combined. I really love the addition, and for a 5th-round pick, I think it's a great deal. He's long, he's lengthy, he's physical, he's just what Seattle needs. I think Seattle's going to maximize him, and that's why I make the comparison early to Richard Sherman.
Cal, what do you think? You share the same enthusiasm for this pickup?
Oh, yeah. I don't even have anything else to add just because Noah hit on literally every single point that there is to be to be made. And he said it best. I mean, we only gave up a 5th-round pick for Pro Football Focus's number 2 ranked cornerback from last year. He didn't even play in all 16 games, yet he had 4 picks, and he was the number 2 cornerback. And he's definitely going to come in right away. I don't even think he's going to challenge Trey Flowers for the starting spot. I think he's going to take his starting spot. He's going to relegate Trey Flowers to a nickel back, maybe even our dime back. Maybe he won't even see any snaps. I don't know. But but Quinton Dunbar, a very underrated player. Because he's played in Washington these last 4 or 5 years, no one's really heard of him. But he's very underrated, one of the better cornerbacks in football. And at the price of a 5th-round pick, one of the best cornerbacks in football, I think it's brilliant. Although many of our fans would have loved to have seen us trade for a big guy like Darius Slay or sign a big name like Chris Harris Jr., I think a name that flies under the radar like Quinton Dunbar is going to pay dividends. And I can't wait to see what he brings to the table. I love the Richard Sherman comparison. I didn't even think about all that, but yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm thrilled myself. I was just thrilled to see a secondary guy, come up in the alerts, because we've been seeing so many offensive linemen, and we know that D-line and secondary has been on everybody's concerns, and the offensive line as well. So it's good to see that they're addressing the areas of need. But I've been this whole time going, man, when are we going to talk about the secondary? Finally, they get one, and it's one of the bigger moves that the Seahawks have made. So I'm pretty excited. I like your in-depth analysis, Noah, comparing him to Richard Sherman. That is going out there a little bit, but he does have that similar build, long. Pretty quick and long arm span, all that kind of stuff, which is what Seattle likes in their corners. And so, it's just nice. We were so wanting Trey Flowers. He had so many moments where he was really good and so many moments where we were like, what the heck was he doing on that play? And I think finally Seattle started thinking the same thing, like, we can't wait forever for this guy to come around. So, pretty excited about that move as well. I want to do a quick, just recognizing the super chat. Anthony D throwing it out there, a $5 super chat supporting the program, and I thank you for that, man. And he says something about he's using his Google Play credits, so he's not spending his hard-earned money. So I appreciate that, because I don't want you to go broke in supporting NorbCam here. But I did want, on that note though, to throw this little incentive here. Never tried this before, but I got. This pretty cool shirt. Let me go to this my wide view here for a second. I've got this NorbCam jersey that was created. I'm sorry, I forgot to get the name of the guy who made this, but made this really cool jersey. I'll find it and put it in the description later. He designed this NorbCam shirt for me, and I'm going to send this to a lucky person who's watching this today. The person who puts the highest super chat today is going to take this thing. I'm going to send this to you. So whoever puts in the highest super chat today, this T-shirt is yours. So I'm just throwing it out there. You don't have to do it, but since those of you who are going to be doing that, a little reward for your support. So thank you so much. All right, guys, let's talk a little bit more about the other move. Maybe not quite so sexy, not quite so exciting, but worth mentioning nonetheless. We've got another offensive lineman decided to take a chance on Chance Warmack, a man who's been in the NFL for 6 years, 6 years in the NFL, age 28, was drafted in the top 10 in 2013 by the Tennessee Titans, was a little bit of a disappointment. They didn't pick up his fifth-year contract. Went to the Eagles for a couple years. Only started 3 games and didn't play at all in 2019. Pretty cheap deal as well. Guys, what do you think here about Chance Warmack? What should we make of this?
I think he's purely a depth move. We love doing this. We love taking guys who have this draft pedigree, who was drafted all in the first round, in the top 10, in the top 15 from like years ago. And I think there was a stat that I read. Chance Warmack, he's like the 10th player in the 2013 draft that we've had on the roster in the last few years. And I mean, so far, none of those moves have panned out. But I mean, I'm hoping that this one ends up differently, but I'm not very optimistic of that happening, only because he's been a year away from football. He was recovering from an injury last year. And when he was playing last, he was a backup in Philly. And the only good thing that I could take from that is that Philly has long had one of the better offensive lines in football. And so being a backup on a team like that, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think that with the year off, I'm not so sure what he's going to bring to the table, but he's definitely going to bring even more depth, even more options for us, offensive line. And with how bad our offensive line has been for forever now, I mean, we can never have too many options. And so a guy with his pedigree, he's had a year off in football. So to be honest, I don't know what he's going to bring to the table, but whatever he brings, I don't think it could be any worse than what we've seen these last couple of years.
What do you think, Noah?
I want to be so optimistic about this signing, but over the past 4 years, he started 5 games. This is a guy, I don't know if you guys remember, but coming out of college, the best thing going for him was his punch off the line, his explosiveness. He could get his hands on defenders, and he could hold and drive. He's good run blocker, very physical. Having only played 5 games over the past 4 years, I think takes a lot, or starting 5 games over the past 4 years, takes a lot of that punch away. He's taken a year away from football. I think Mike Solari is going to be a good coach to try and get him back into the fundamentals of things, because Solari is a fundamentalist. But I highly doubt he still has even nearly the punch that he once did. And unfortunately, I don't think this is going to be a big move.
Well, I guess the positive to this is that they're not spending a lot of money to do it either. So you kind of get what you pay for. And so at probably less than $1 million a year, maybe just somewhere above league minimum, this is a relatively safe move, I suppose. And you can never have enough depth on that O-line, as we learned a year ago. So 2 very different signings. One that was very exciting, and one that was kind of like, okay, a body in there, but you need bodies. We know that. So, not a terrible move, but nothing to get too excited about. So, so that's kind of where we are. I'm going to pull up a graphic here, just kind of showing where we are. I'm going to kind of recap. There have been a lot of people asking, so can you talk about kind of how many free agents have we signed? How many have left? And so I put up a graphic here, and I think it's accurate to date. I'll pull it up right now. And this is a list of all of the free agents who have re-signed, who we've acquired, who have left, and who are still to be determined here. So bear with me as I go through this list. You can see it on your screen. So we've re-signed Jaron Reed, Jacob Hollister, tight end, Joey Hunt, backup center, David Moore, wide receiver, and Brandon Jackson, defensive end. So those guys are back. Who we've acquired in the offseason so far, Quinton Dunbar, cornerback we just talked about, Chance Warmack, and then our offensive lineman Cedric Obwehi, Brandon Shell, BJ Finney, and then, of course, we picked up Bruce Irvin, defensive end, and Greg Olson, tight end from the Panthers. And those who have left, George Fant, our versatile tackle / tight end who can make diving catches out of the end zone, but out of bounds. Quentin Jefferson, defensive end. And Al Woods, the latest Seahawk to go. I believe he went to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Just real quick, guys, before I talk about just the guys who are still kind of on the list of to be determined, what kind of names, just real quick, what stands out from those? I guess, which is the signing that you're most excited about, and which is the Seahawk that left you're most disappointed and had to leave us?
Well, one signing you got to add to the list that it happened just now. I know you see the chat blowing up talking about Philip Dorsett.
Oh,
That's gonna.
Okay.
Yeah, so we just added Philip Dorsett, so that's going to be a big piece for us. Another guy that can fill the role of wide receiver when we have injuries. We saw Tyler Lockett injured last year. Josh Gordon, we don't know what his status is going to be, if he's going to be allowed back in the NFL, even though now it's legal to smoke weed. But we'll see what's going on there. I think Philip Dorsett is a good addition for Seattle. They've been noted as one of the key teams interested for a while. Mm-hmm. But the biggest free agent that I think that we lost, unfortunately, is going to be George Fant. I think having him as a guy that was raised in Seattle, or not raised as a child, but raised as a child in the NFL, he's one of those guys, like, he was a homegrown product. He knew the system really well. He was a really good sixth offensive lineman for us when we used him. It hurts me to see him leave. I'm happy to see him get paid, though, in New York.
How about you, Calvin?
I think for me, can I say nobody? I'm not very upset that any of these guys left. Because at best they were all just depth guys. But if I did have to pick somebody, it would just be George Fant. But only because, I mean, for the reasons that Noah highlighted once again, he's a homegrown guy. He's filled multiple roles for us. He's versatile. As we've witnessed, he's able to catch passes in the end zone. Or at least he's able to, to get out there and catch passes. And he was always that, that sixth lineman, because we love those jumbo formations where, we bring in a sixth offensive lineman. But I think that with all the guys that we've signed now, I mean, we have multiple guys that can fill that role at a much cheaper rate. And so seeing him leave for that much money, I mean, it's good for him. I'm happy to see him get paid, just like but I mean, there's no way I would have paid him that much money, not even anywhere near that money. So, yeah, I'm not very upset, but if I had to pick one, it'd be George Fant.
I just got a super chat from Wordna Swag. It says, tell the boy Baldwin to come back. Gordon return? I think Baldwin's days are over, although he's been very busy in the community advocating getting assistance to help those who are in need here during this crisis. So hats off to Doug Baldwin for still being involved in what's going on here in the Puget Sound area. As far as Josh Gordon, you mentioned it, still up in the air. He did send a tweet out saying still a free agent, but he loves those green unis. So it sounds like Josh Gordon would love to come back. I think if the league could have would welcome him back even after all the strikes he's had, it's kind of hard to say that would happen, but man, when he was with us, he was doing some pretty cool things. But I don't know. You guys think that the chances of Josh Gordon come back to the Seahawks, it's really kind of up to the league, isn't it, at this point?
Yeah, it's all up to the commissioner at this point. If they're willing to let him back in, though, I think Seattle's definitely the place that he would want to be. He was really working for us in the short time that we had him, catching passes down the field, making plays. We all remember the plays he made at San Francisco. Easily our best game of the year. So I'd say if he is to come back, Seattle is definitely the place where he would be the best fit. And I'd like to see him come back. Now that it's legal, I definitely think that he should be allowed back.
Yeah, I'm with you, Noah, here. I don't think that, even if he was to be reinstated, I don't even think that many teams would be interested, just because he's had so many strikes. And yeah, marijuana is legal now, but I feel like he's just messed up to the point where it's like teams aren't going to want to deal with that. Teams are going to want to look to the draft instead to fill their wide receiver needs, because this draft is supposed to be loaded with a whole bunch of receiver prospects. So I think other teams are willing to go that route. But I think for us, we would love to re-sign him, and it looks like the feeling is mutual. He did spend 4 or 5 games, in our system. So I feel like he'd love to continue to build off of that. And yeah, I'd love to have him back.
So we got another super chat from Rock Lee. Does Philip Dorsett signing add enough wide receiver depth? Since this is kind of breaking as we're talking about this, can you guys get into Philip Dorsett? What exactly does he do for Seattle?
That's exactly what he does. I think depth is the reason we bring him in. He's not going to blow your socks off. He's not going to be our next DK Metcalf. He's not going to be our next Tyler Lockett. He could be our next Jermaine Kearse, the guy that just makes the catches that we need him to make when it's important. He's not going to blow your socks off, but he is a depth move, and our wide receiving core was already loaded. Bringing in a veteran like Dorsett that's played in New England for years, that's going to be a big piece for Seattle in terms of depth and professionalism. I really like the signing.
Once again, he's another one of those guys who has that draft pedigree. The Colts actually took him in the first round. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. And so here we are again, signing guys with that first-round pedigree. I'm with you once again, though. He's going to bring depth, but he's also going to be able to stretch the floor. He's a speedster. He's a deep threat. And I think that alongside DK, he can also run deep. Tyler can also run deep. Having a third guy that can run deep and blow the top off of defenses with his speed, that was one of the things that got him drafted in the first round because of how fast he was and how electric he was over at Miami. And so while he hasn't lived up to that billing as a first-round pick, he's definitely going to bring depth and bring speed, another deep threat in our wide receiving core. So I love the signing.
Here's a little oops, that's not it. I was trying to pull up little stats on Philip Dorsett. Here he goes. So 2019, played 14 games, 29 receptions, 397 yards, 13.7 yards per reception, 5 touchdowns. You know, it's not bad. Like you said, that does feel very Jermaine Kearse-ish like. And, but again, depth is good to have. So, another name to add to our growing free agency list here. So, going back to the names, that list I had going of the names to be determined yet here. Of course, we got Jadeveon Clowney, the continued Jadeveon Clowney watch. We're all waiting to find out where he goes. But other names that still be determined: Ezekiel Ansah, Michael Kendricks, who, by the way, his sentence, for those of you who forgot about his white collar crime, the insider trading sentence that he got, feels like an eternity ago. They got pushed again. The sentence he got pushed back again to May 29th, I believe. So we still have yet to know what the fate of Michael Kendricks is after all these months he's been playing football, but still waiting to find out the sentence to his crime. We'll see what happens there. But continuing down that list, Mike Iupati, Jermaine Ifedi, we talked about Josh Gordon, Jerron Brown, Akeem King, Marshawn Lynch, Nico Thorpe, Dakota Watson, Robert Turbin, Geno Smith, CJ Prosise, Kalen Reed, Jordan Simmons, Jeremy Boykins, and Tyrone Swoops. All still essentially unrestricted free agents floating out there whose fate is yet to be determined. So we'll see what happens with those guys. I think a lot of these guys, though, have seen their last time in a Seahawks uniform. Are any of those guys names that you're hoping will come back somehow, some way?
Aside from Jadeveon Clowney and Josh Gordon, I'd like to see Nico Thorpe come back. He isn't anything special, but I think he brings a lot to our special teams. He brings a lot to like some of our dime packages on defense as that sixth cornerback coming in. And if I'm not mistaken, he was a captain for our special teams. I don't know if it was last year, but the years before. So he definitely brings experience and veteran leadership. While I wouldn't be sad to see him go, I would like to see us make some sort of effort to bring him back.
I like Jermaine Ifedi. I know we brought in a bunch of offensive linemen this offseason, but I want to see Jermaine Ifedi not at right tackle, but inside at guard. I really think that could be a renaissance type of move for his career. He's the guy that's consistently there. He just consistently makes dumb mistakes that get penalties, or he gets beat off the outside. A lot of those problems could be fixed by putting him in at guard. I think we bring him in there and we really capitalize on what he's great at, and that's being physical and being an overwhelming power on those skinny defensive ends at times. And so I'd like to see him move inside. Let's use his strength. Let's use the fact that he's available and the fact that he's been in Seattle this whole career and give him one more chance on the inside. I'd like to see us bring back Jermaine Ifedi.
We've talked about this many times. Ifedi on the inside, I think, makes the most sense. And he's a big guy. He just doesn't really have the outside tackle footwork, I think. And I think inside that could be the spot that he could land in there. So Now we'll see what happens, but I know a lot of people would not be sad to see the name Jermaine Ifedi no longer on the Seahawks roster. But I think you guys just got to, if we see him in the right place, it might be a whole different thing. So we shall see. So we were talking a little bit earlier, some interesting outside the Seahawks, a couple of quarterbacks kind of drawing some attention. We've got Deshaun Watson, some stirring things up in the Twitterverse, and Cam Newton, a free agent out there without a home. Guys, Noah, you were the one who brought up the Deshaun Watson tweet. Why don't you talk about what was the thing that he got up there that's a little bit revealing of possibly what's going on there at the Houston Texans?
So I think it's important that just for our listeners that we read the tweet real quick. So it goes, I don't know how I'm going to make it out of here clean. Can't even keep a track of who plays for the other team. Iconic duos rip and split at the seams. He's throwing shade at Bill O'Brien. He just got split from his partner in crime, DeAndre Hopkins, I believe the second best wide receiver in football, the best hands in the NFL. You just sent him away, not because he was hurting us on the field, but because you couldn't come to an agreement with him off the field. That trade was not about on the field prowess, obviously. Otherwise, they're just idiots in football sense. They moved him because he disagreed with Bill O'Brien. Everyone hates the trade. Deshaun Watson, not only was he great friends with DeAndre Hopkins, but it hurts him on the field. Deshaun Watson wants to get paid here soon, and he just got hurt with one of his main weapon of his entire career is now gone. It's devastating for Deshaun Watson. He's throwing shade. Lots of people are rumoring he wants out of Houston. And until a head coach is changed down there or management change, I don't blame him. Yeah, I don't blame him. And as we go down the line here, heading into the season, it's going to be interesting what else Deshaun Watson does to make us think that he'll want out of there. But I really think the frustration has been building in Houston for a while, and I feel like there's a ceiling that they haven't been able to overcome. Every single year, we see them making all these different moves, bringing in different personnel. The problem has consistently been the head coach and the GM because it's the same guy. That's the real problem down there in Houston. Bill O'Brien's got to let go of his stranglehold on that team. He doesn't deserve to have it, and until he does, they're going to be destined for a second-round exit.
I'm going to take it even further. I don't even see this team making the playoffs next year. It's almost as if Bill O'Brien's trying to sabotage his guy by robbing him of his number one receiver, his best offensive threat, and one of his best chances at winning. I mean, what's Deshaun Watson going to do with receivers who can't even stay on the field? Randall Cobb, they signed Randall Cobb. When was the last time he played all 16 games? When was the last time he had 1,000 yards? Kenny Stills, he can't stay healthy. Will Fuller, he can't stay healthy. And now you're going to give him a washed-up running back in David Johnson. He also can't stay healthy. He's had a terrible offensive line for almost as long as he's been in the NFL. He should want out. I mean, once again, I can't blame him. It almost seems as if Bill O'Brien's sabotaging the team. So why not, complete the final step in that by requesting a trade? And they're stripping the defense of the quality players that they do have, of the limited quality players that they do have. We mentioned this, I think, in the last video, but they let go of DJ Reader. He's an upcoming defensive tackle. They let the Bengals sign him for 4 years and $53 million. The Texans have a whole bunch of cap space. They could have easily used some of that cap space to bring back a defensive cornerstone, and yet they ended up letting him leave to Cincinnati Bengals of all teams. And so, yeah, if I'm Deshaun Watson, I would have been requested a trade the moment that they traded DeAndre Hopkins for that terrible package. And if I was Deshaun Watson, I'd even take it a step further and look to potentially even hold out. Yeah, that's just kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think we've discussed all season that that move was the most surprising, nonsensical move I think we've seen in the entire NFL so far this whole season. It's crazy when you got a guy like that, a game-changing guy, and you let him go and get David Johnson. David Johnson, what does he bring to the table? The guy who's just been injury-prone and on the sideline more than he's been on the field. Does not make a lot of sense, but understanding where he's coming from with that frustration. Let's talk about the Cam Newton. I think we saw this coming for a while now. with the change in coaching staff over at head coach at the Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton with his recent injury history. And I think really this is an example of the coronavirus affecting the NFL in ways that we, not just in terms of the immediate sense that sports seasons being cut short, but in the NFL, who's not in season right now, the effect that they have is teams aren't going to take as many chances on players because, especially when they have an injury history, because they can't get them in their facility to do a thorough examination of them. Cam Newton now, I think choices are just a little bit slim right now because teams want to make sure that if they're going to pick him up, that he doesn't have lingering issues that might be carrying over from what he's been dealing with, and they can't really check that out. So, guys, what do you think about Cam Newton floating out there, free agent?
There's not many teams out there left that are in need of a starting quarterback. And, with the whole coronavirus crisis going on, it's hard for injured guys like him to visit other teams and get checked on to, make sure that he's healthy enough to sign and all that. And so that definitely limits the options that he has. On the last video, I did bring up the Chargers as a possibility. But since then, they've committed to Tyrod Taylor as a starting quarterback. And I think they're going to look to draft a quarterback instead in the upcoming NFL draft. So I think that all but eliminates the Chargers from contention for Cam Newton. So I think another team that, I could throw out there would maybe be the Jacksonville Jaguars. With them trading away Nick Foles, I feel like they should bring in a guy to compete with Gardner Minshew. He did show some signs last year, but, he was a sixth-round pick, and he didn't show any, signs of being a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. So I think you bring in a guy like Cam Newton. I think if he could stay healthy, he could easily take that job away from Gardner Minshew. They're doing some things on defense. They're rebuilding that defensive unit, and they stopped Leonard Fournette on offense. DJ Chark, an emerging option at receiver. So I think that Jacksonville would be a solid option for Cam Newton.
Yeah, I think a lot of the problem that we're facing with Cam Newton is that, like Calvin, you alluded to, and you made a very great point, the market's pretty much dead. Tom Brady was one of the big dominoes that fell. We're seeing quarterbacks starting to end up in new situations now this offseason, and where there's teams that still are without a quarterback, like the Chargers, like Jacksonville, there's a lot of quarterbacks in this draft that are going to get drafted, and teams are going to look at them as if they're going to be their starting guy. This is a pretty good draft in terms of quarterback. Another thing that people aren't mentioning very much, but should be mentioned, is that Trevor Lawrence is coming up soon. And there are going to be some teams like a Jacksonville, like a New England, that I could see taking a year and stepping back, trying to put themselves in position to have an early round pick and go after Trevor Lawrence, either by having the first overall pick or by being in position with the third, fourth, or the second, somewhere where you're within range to make a trade for that first round pick and go get that franchise guy like Trevor Lawrence. But talking about Cam Newton, I think what we have to do, honestly, with him is, first of all, he has to be extremely humbled right now. No team pretty much is going to take you in and just make you their starter right now and pay you as such. You're going to have to compete no matter where you go. Once we have that in mind, there are a couple different places we would look. I'd definitely say probably a 1 year contract no matter where, because say he goes to the Chargers. Calvin, you were saying it's unrealistic. I agree with that because of the fact that Justin Herbert is a guy that I think that they're looking at. But if he were to go there and just compete with Herbert for a year or let Herbert start off the bench for a little bit, the Chargers, that would be a protection move, unlike what really happened with Daniel Jones over there in New York. Give Cam a little bit of time. One of the pros of it would be, finally, after having a guy for so long in Phillip Rivers that was a statue in the pocket, now you have a mobile guy at least. Give Cam another shot, at least put it on his resume for next season. Very talented roster, and have someone Justin Herbert could learn from potentially, but Cam would have to be willing to go there for a limited role, and that's the problem that we're facing with Cam Newton right now. No matter where he goes, if he goes to Jacksonville, that whole surrounding cast is leaving. I think they're tanking this year for Trevor Lawrence next year because they just traded away everyone. New England and another team, I think they're looking at Jordan Love potentially in this draft. But if they don't get a guy in this draft, I say they don't bring in anybody and they tank next year for Trevor Lawrence. How would Bill Belichick do with Trevor Lawrence in that system now in New England? That'd be a real slap to the face of everyone in the NFL, as well as Tom Brady, who left this offseason, not by his own choice, but because the Patriots didn't want him back. And so Belichick wants to prove that he can win without him. Why not take this year off if you're not sold on any of these guys in the draft? I don't see any reason why one of these franchises would want to move in on Cam Newton as if he was going to be their only guy heading into the season. We saw Chicago, one of the teams rumored to really like him, go out there and trade for Nick Foles instead. Like the ultimate sign that Cam Newton really doesn't have much of a market right now, and he's going to have to take a diminished role wherever he goes.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation now with just so many changes going on. And a while back, a few years back, I made a video about how I said I feel sorry for New England Patriots fans because I talked about when the day would come when Brady and Belichick, that tandem would end and things would change over there. Now, I know we haven't gotten to the season, and who knows, Belichick could still work some miracle and turn his program into a winning one. But it's not going to be what it's been for the past decade and a half or more. And when I made that video, I think they still won another 1 or 2 Super Bowls. So obviously they still had some glory years even after I made that video. But I knew that year was going to come, and here it is. And it'll be interesting to see, with those two separated, who's going to have the more successful season. Tom Brady with Tampa Bay, or Bill Belichick with, who knows, Brian Hoyer or somebody at quarterback. Will both make it to the postseason? Will one of them make it to the postseason? Will neither of them make it to the postseason? What's your guys' take? Who do you think's got the better chance of making it to the postseason between the Buccaneers and the Patriots this year?
That's easy. That's the Buccaneers. With the Patriots, they're going to be competing in the loaded AFC, and so you don't have anyone at quarterback right now, and so it's kind of hard to tell. But I think that with the options available, even if they were to draft a guy in the draft, I don't think that any of those guys would be able to immediately vault them into playoff contention. They still do have a solid defense, but, teams like the Buffalo Bills in their own division are making moves to take over that division. And so I think it'd be hard for them to even make a dent in their division, much less even make the playoffs. And like I said in one of the last videos, I think the Buccaneers are playoff locks. They were already pretty good last year with a guy throwing 30 touchdowns and 30 picks. And so you put in a guy like Tom Brady who barely throws picks, and he's going to make that team so much better. And I've been hearing that there's a whole bunch of free agents that want to sign with the Buccaneers just because of Tom Brady going over there. And so that's a domino that's yet to kind of fully take effect. But, yeah, I'd say the Buccaneers easily.
Have you guys ever heard Bill Belichick go on some long rant in a press conference where he was over-explaining things and just talking crazy? Me neither. And that Bill Belichick isn't a talk-to-you kind of guy. He doesn't tell you what he's going to do. He shows you. He's a poppy kind of guy. I like to think Belichick this season, he's not gonna go crazy in New England. I think New England takes a major step back this year. I think I heard this comparison and I agree with it. I think they're going to be a lot like Miami of last year. They're not going to win a lot of games, but they're going to lose a lot of games, like 23-17, fighting hard, good talent around everything, but you don't have the quarterback that you need, and that's going to cost you many games on its own. I think Belichick intentionally loses for next year so that he can get a quarterback like a Trevor Lawrence and then just show the world what he's really about. Belichick wants to prove the world that he can win without Tom Brady. He knows he doesn't have the quarterback right now that's going to do that. He knows he lost a couple key pieces on defense already this offseason and offense. He's not going to be able to just put a quarterback from this draft with where they're positioned into that situation and go make a run at it this year. So I think they take a year off. And I think next year is going to be the year where they really make a push for the Super Bowl once again. They also know that the Bills just made a trade for Stephon Diggs. As the years go on, they're going to have to pay more players up there in Buffalo. It really feels like a good year for Buffalo. And that's why New England takes a step back this year. I agree with you, Calvin. I think Tampa Bay is going to compete for the Super Bowl this year. I think they're going to be a really good team. I was big on Tampa Bay last year. I was a year too early, but I'm sticking with Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is going to be a really good team this year, and I definitely think Tom Brady will win this short-term breakup.
It's gonna be fun to watch, just to see that first time when he takes the field. Assuming we have a football season that opens on time, watching Tampa Bay in that uniform. So recapping some of the news of the day. Of course, the latest, the Philip Dorsett pickup, wide receiver, signed just while we were broadcasting here. I think the news broke. Then of course we got Quinton Dunbar from the Redskins, and then Chance Warmack, offensive line. And that leaves us to the one still lingering piece that everybody's wondering about: what to do, what's going to happen with Jadeveon Clowney. Has this changed anything? Do you guys still feel like he's coming back? What's your overall take as we get closer and closer to finally knowing what's going to happen with Jadeveon Clowney?
I think that at this point, the only real team that's in contention for Jadeveon Clowney is us, the Hawks.
Don't say that. Oh, you're gonna jinx it. No.
Let me knock on wood.
What are you doing, Calvin?
Let me explain. I just feel like if there was another team that was going to swoop in with some sort of big money offer, they would have done it by now. I mean, we're almost a week into free agency. Cap space around the league is dwindling. There aren't many teams that really have a need at pass rusher anymore. The teams that did have a need at pass rusher are adding other guys or signing other guys. Some of the other teams that are rebuilding are looking towards the draft. And so, I mean, and with Clowney coming off core muscle surgery, he's kind of in the same situation as Cam. Teams are unable to bring him in to kind of look at them himself. I mean, to look at him from their staff of like team doctors and all that. They can't really examine him to the best of their ability. And so I think his options are very limited right now. And the only real options is Seattle. I think that once he returns to Seattle, it'll be on a short-term deal just so he can hit free agency again in a year or two. But expect him back in Seattle.
Well, I think Jadeveon Clowney was looking for a long-term deal, and I agree with Calvin, and I definitely agree with the comparison to Cam Newton. The market really hasn't been there for this guy. The way that he was expecting heading into free agency, I think it's a great thing, like we've been talking about, that it's taken this long to get a deal. I think that favors the team that's been trying to lowball them. The further we go into free agency, the more favorable it is for the team signing players because the market is not there as much. Just by waiting, the market disappeared for Cam Newton. The same thing is happening for Jadeveon Clowney. I'm not going to go on the very controversial limb and say we're the only team that has a chance at him because I'm not trying to jinx Seattle the way Calvin is trying to, but I am going to say that it is good for Seattle rather than for Jadeveon that it's taking this long. The longer it takes, the better it is. The more likely it is for Seattle to get him back. And so I look forward to hearing the news about Jadeveon Clowney because I expect that it's going to be back to Seattle somewhere around 19 to 20 million.
A 1 year deal, or are we talking like maybe a 2 year deal?
I think
slightly lower.
I think 3 years. I think he wanted a contract with a team that he can fall in love with. I think we get him to a 3-year deal, 19, 20 million, give him incentives of a couple million, where if he goes out and has this certain number of sacks in a season, he can get that extra money that will put him towards the top paid in the NFL. And I think we agree on a deal that will keep him in Seattle. Wishful thinking, by the way. Just I'm hoping this will happen.
I'm hoping that too as well. In case you guys don't know who I'm talking to here, I'm joined by Calvin, Domingo, and Noah Boelter. Both of these guys are sports enthusiasts at KGRG Radio. They got their own podcast called The Bolt. You can see it in the description. And these guys also have a radio show on Saturdays on KGRG. If you get the KGRG app. Tell everybody about where they can listen to your show and get your further analysis on everything sports besides the NFL.
Yeah, through the KGRG app every single Saturday, 10 to 1. It's been pretty rough with the whole coronavirus situation going on. You know, the school was getting clean last week. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to go back in this week, but we're always doing the SoundCloud posts. We podcasted up the show last week and put it on SoundCloud, so SoundCloud is always going to be there for you. And then I also post daily videos. I just posted a video today breaking down Quinton Dunbar, the new cornerback we traded for, and my very very controversial comparison that not a lot of people agree with. But I'm the first one to say it. I haven't heard anyone say this about Quinton Dunbar, Richard Sherman. That's my comparison. I posted a video about it. It's on my YouTube channel at DJ Squabo.
All right. Yes, so I see some people asking. They want to know about the Quinton Dunbar. Well, we talked it quite a bit to death, but needless to say, we are very excited about what he adds to the secondary, and one of the more exciting moves the Seahawks have made this offseason. Guys, anything else? I think we've covered most of the Seahawks moves. A little bit of non-Seahawks related stuff. Anything else that comes on your radar that we haven't addressed here, NFL or otherwise?
Real quick, the Panthers signed Robby Anderson of the Jets to a 2-year, $20 million deal. So he's, I think, one of the most coveted wideouts on the market, and he's finally found a team in Carolina.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I think that's a really good signing. If you don't mind, Norb, I think it'd be a really good idea to talk about the XFL and was it successful in its first year. They're saying they'll come back for next season. I like to see them come back, and we've already seen, 3 players signed now in the NFL from the XFL just last season. So I think it's a success. Like PJ Walker to Carolina, I think he's going to compete. The comparison or the throwback to when Matt Rule was coaching at Temple and PJ Walker was down there with him. Now he's playing in Carolina with a chance to fight Teddy Bridgewater for the starting job. I think that's a big piece. Jordan Ta'amu signs with Kansas City in a backup role. So I think the XFL was a success in its first season, even though it was cut short. Seattle, we have great fans, and so of course our guys were cheering on the Dragons as long as we could before the whole coronavirus epidemic. So I think the XFL was a great idea. I think the fact that it was so successful and got people back in the NFL accomplished what its goals were. I think there's going to be some more rules that we're going to take from the XFL, and so I'd regard it as a success in year one.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool to see that. And I think that's the one thing that if they could continue to make that model work, where players can see the XFL as a place where that could be a stepping stone either back to the NFL or for those college players who didn't get picked up, for them to showcase their talent and find their place on the roster. I mean, that's what I think is going to make it successful down the line, because we all know that in the end, it's all about the players. That people want to see players that they know on the field, whether it's somebody they saw before on a previous team who got let go and never picked up, or if it's somebody who they watched in college who just didn't quite land anywhere else. That's the kind of thing that I think is going to make people very, very excited to, keep watching. And yeah, it was cut short, but so far it seemed like it was a model that was working. So
That's fun.
I'm disappointed I didn't get to go to a game. I was going to go to one with my dad and watch it in person. We just never got to it. But I think it'll be around next year, and it'll be fun to see it when all this stuff is done, to see the second coming of that. Really, football in general has gotten a major makeover this year because we got the new CBA for the NFL, and that's going to change a few things already come next year. With the playoff system, it's going to be a little different. We have a couple extra teams now making it to the playoffs, and opening up the possibility of some teams who wouldn't have made it otherwise getting it in there. And then of course, the 17-game season right around the corner. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think that's going to happen in 2021. But right. The CBA and the XFL, just a lot of changes in the sport in general.
Yeah, I think having a farm system, most people wouldn't look at the XFL as a farm system, but I think for me, that's sort of like a farm system comparable to, to the NBA G League, what it is to the NBA. It's always, cool to have like that little farm system where you could, bring players in and out. You could develop players. Players can work on their game. Norb said it, college players who didn't get the chance to be drafted, they get to show out in the XFL and prove that, I should have been drafted. And so, having a league like the XFL, I think it's a great move. I think that should definitely, continue. And I think it was on for 3, 4, 5 weeks before the whole coronavirus thing hit. There was a lot of interest in it, especially in week 1. There were over 1 million viewers. And so it's definitely something that they should look to continue doing.
From the chat, Dana Tamoras was asking, what is the CBA? Actually, we should clarify. The CBA is the collective bargaining agreement. It's about every 10 years or so. It seems that's when the owners and the players union get together and basically talk about the contract that essentially defines the relationship between the owners and the players in terms of number of games, in terms of pay, in terms of cut of the revenues, just everything that defines how the league is run. That's kind of what the CBA is, and they just recently voted and passed that CBA. And actually, I think it was a good thing they did, given that that CBA was drafted before the coronavirus came in. It basically completely changed everything about our world. So I think it was a smart move that the players actually signed it, because had this happened after the virus, who knows what kind of parameters the owners might have changed, and the players may not have been getting the same kind of deal that they were able to sign to. So despite the controversy about some of the players saying they didn't like it, Russell Wilson, one of them, saying he didn't like the CBA, I think in the end, given the nature of this world, signing that CBA was probably the best thing that happened for the players. Do you guys agree with that?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I think that, especially in time, for free agency and the draft and all that, having a new CBA in place was essential. Because imagine if that CBA wasn't passed and the NFL could have been placed in lockdown. And so then free agency and the draft would have been very hard to come by. Training camps and OTAs. I mean, there's already lingering concerns now as to whether or not OTAs and training camps are even going to be in place. And so I think that having the CBA done before all this stuff was very beneficial.
Yeah, it's definitely good that they got it done. I think it'll be good for the players as long as they really embrace the changes. And I feel like for the fans and for the ownership, it's going to be a great thing. So I don't know if who gets the best deal out of it. I'd say, honestly, the fans, just because, we love these changes now. So it's definitely a win for the fans, but for the players, some like it, some didn't. It was a very close vote. That to each their own, I guess. But I'd say, especially for us fans, it's going to be a great thing.
Yeah, and I've never been in love with the preseason. It seems to go on forever. And now only 3 preseason games and 17 regular season games. For us as fans, of course, we don't have to go on the field and put our bodies at risk, but for us, we get more games that count and less games that don't. So that by itself is a pretty exciting thing. So, well, I think we're close to the end of our hour here, but I just want to say again, special thanks to my guests here, Calvin Domingo and Noah Boelter from KGRG Radio. Again, check out their social media handles there if you want to get in touch with them, and check out the description where you can find their podcast of their radio show, and download the KGRG app, and you can listen to them live when they get back to the studio once the school is back in order. But you can listen to their broadcasts on every Saturday. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys offering your insight and being part of this. It's always a good time, and I'm sure we'll be talking again as there's still a little bit more time left on free agency here as we await the Clowney news. But thanks you guys for joining my broadcast here, and always appreciate it, man.
It's always a pleasure, Norb. Thank you so much.
Hey man, let's just lock it in. As soon as Jadeveon Clowney re-signs, we gotta go live right then. Yes.
It's not like we're going anywhere. So just be standing by. We're just fired up with breaking news. But on that point, it's my time. I gotta go. My time is up. That's what that ring is for. And you guys don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I think the winner for the T-shirt goes to Anthony D for being the largest super chatter this time. So take care, guys. We'll talk soon. Stay safe out there, and go Hawks.